Greetings. This summer has been a scorcher, especially down in Texas. Day after day, the high temperatures have been 104, 105, 106, occasionally 108 degrees. But this unpleasant heat is nothing compared to the punishing heat God brings on his enemies just before the battle of Armageddon. Revelation 16:8. Then the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the power was given to scorch men with fire. Now that doesn't sound pleasant at all. Verse 9. And the men were scorched with great heat, and they blasphemed the name of God who has power over these plagues, and they did not repent and give him glory. Why is God telling mankind about this time of scorching heat in the future? Why would God do such a thing, and why would he tell us about it ahead of time? God is merciful, and he's giving mankind foreknowledge and a way to avoid the scorching heat that's coming. God shows that not all humans will feel this heat. Now that's good news. Everybody doesn't get to feel it, just some get to feel it. So we should ask, which people will suffer this extreme scorching heat? The answer is found in Revelation 16:2. So the first went and poured his bowl on the earth, and a foul, loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast, talked about in Revelation, and those who worshipped his image, also mentioned in Revelation. After World War III in the Middle East and the nuclear war that follows World War III comes the 3.5-year Great Tribulation, where Satan and the 666 beast person form a one world ruling government. You may have heard about that, talk about that, and a lot of people have concluded the only way that the world can move in harmony is to have one government over everything. And this is Satan's attempt to do that before Jesus comes and sets up his one world ruling government. Revelation 13:4. So they worshiped the dragon, Satan, who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Revelation 13:5. And he was given authority to continue 42 months. That's 3.5 years by God's calendar approach. Question: why must the beast empire be punished with scorching heat? And why does God consider the 666 beast person an evil enemy of God? Well, the answer to that is found in three powerful places: Revelation 13:6 and Daniel 11:36 and 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and they all show the behavior of this evil Hitler-like person. Hitler was bad, really bad in World War II. This is a Hitler on steroids type person. Revelation 13:6. Then he, the 666 beast person, opened his mouth in blasphemy against God. Well, there you go. That makes him an enemy of God. To blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and those who dwell in heaven. Daniel 11:36. Then the king, this beast person, shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods. That's God the Father in heaven and Jesus. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Who exalts himself above all that is called God and that is worshipped, so that he sits as God, presents himself as God, in the temple or the shrine of God on the mount of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, showing himself that he is God, and people will be believing it because they won't have all the information they need. This beast is a human using powers of Satan, the devil, which are going to be extraordinary and far beyond what we know today. And that's why we have the book of Revelation. Now, back in the book of Revelation, Revelation 13:7, it was granted to him to make war with the saints, the servants of God, and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe and tongue and nation. This beast person also has a sidekick. There's two of them, there's not just one of them, right? A sidekick, then he's called the false prophet. Verse 12 of Revelation 13, and he, the false prophet, exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and all who dwell in earth to worship the first beast, this 666 beast person. Verse 13, and he performs great signs, the sidekick performs great signs, so that even he makes fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. Now, if you saw this on TV, or if you were standing there and some holy man called down fire from heaven at will, you'd be pretty impressed, and you might be suspecting, well, that's the man of God, right? No, that's the man of Satan doing that. He does amazing signs to trick humans into turning against God and worshiping the fake Christ human and the image that's made with hands. Now, how dumb is that? If you make something with hands, why should you worship it? You're a human being. You're better than something that was made with hands, like an image to a beast. Verse 14, and he deceives those who dwell on earth by the signs, right, the miracles, the fire down from heaven, which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on earth to make an image of the beast, like make a statue of the beast. This happened, you can see this back in the early parts of the Bible, where Nebuchadnezzar made a beast, and when they played the music, it was the law of the land, that everybody saw the image and they heard the music, they'd all fall down and worship this stupid man-made dumb image of Nebuchadnezzar. All right, back in Revelation 13:15, and he, the false prophet, was granted power from Satan to give the image breath, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now, okay, they make an image out with the hands of mankind, out of material, right? But this is extraterrestrial. This is Satan giving powers for the beast. It's the image of the beast, this statue, to be able to speak and cause people who won't worship it to be killed. So this is serious business. The message will be, worship this fake Christ person and his image, or die. That's pretty simple, isn't it? What are most people going to decide to do? I want to keep living, I'm going to worship the beast, right? But then they will have the fire come upon them in a little while. Verse 16, Revelation 13. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive the mark on their right hand and in their foreheads, or in their foreheads, one or the other. And that no man may buy or sell except that he has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So when these people go to buy food, we all like to eat food, we all go to buy food somehow or other. In the marketplace, it will be obvious that they are part of the worship system if you can see the mark in the right hand, or if you can see the mark in the forehead. If you can't see the mark, then the people selling the groceries are going to say, can't sell to you, I'll get in trouble with the police, right? So those without the mark of the beast will be unable to buy food or to work for wages to have money to buy food. This one world ruling government leader wants people to worship him or to die. So makes it very simple, he's God. God in Revelation is telling all serious Bible readers to understand that people must choose the beast empire or the truth of God with no middle ground. There'll be no sitting on the fence. And this is, do or die stuff. If you worship God, then you're in the best shape, and you won't have this heat, this scorching heat come upon you. But if you choose to stay alive for a few more months or a few more years and worship the beast, then you can expect to have this searing heat come upon you. If people get tricked by Satan and the beast person, they can expect to be scorched with this great heat. Revelation 16:8. The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and power was given him to scorch men with fire. God is merciful and does not want humans to choose and worship the dark side. Revelation 14:9, and the third angel followed them, another warning from God, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, verse 10, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, and that's Jesus Christ. So when Jesus comes to earth, he will destroy the beast person and lock Satan away for 1,000 years. That's the good news. The bad news is this happens after the people get scorched with incredible heat. Revelation 19:19, I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered to make war against him, Jesus, who sat on the horse, and his army. Verse 20, and then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in the presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. So if you have this knowledge in your head, you know that the one world ruling government is soon going to be destroyed, and the two human leaders will be thrown in the lake of fire and die by being thrown in the lake of fire, and Satan will be locked away, and then all that will be left is Christ and his people setting up the new kingdom, the new world. Verse 21, the rest were killed with the sword. This is the soldiers of the beast power that proceeded out of the mouth of him, Jesus, who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. You see vultures all the time down along the streets, cleaning up the roadkill from last night. Jesus fights against the evil beast empire and destroys it, then locks Satan away from humans for the next 1,000 years so humans can experience peace and tranquility and happy and be prosperous and have happy families and happy children. Revelation 20 verse 1, and I saw the angel coming down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. Verse 3, and he cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal on him so that he should deceive the nations no more until the 1,000 years were finished. Well, that's what Satan is doing and has been doing and will be doing in this tribulation period, just before the plagues are poured out and the searing heat is poured on those who are worshiping the beast. Our merciful God is telling all humans about the most horrific human events ever to occur on planet Earth in the near future. God's desire for each person is that they do not take the mark of the beast. So if you're alive, and you probably will be, in the time of the mark of the beast, and they say, you've got to take this or else, you better remember that God said, don't take it, or there will be an or else. And therefore, if they don't take the mark of the beast, they won't be scorched by fire and heat. The Great Tribulation and the events before will be the worst experience in all human history. Much worse than the hell of World War I, which almost nobody remembers now, may have seen it on TV, or World War II, which is still fairly often played on TV. God in his mercy has provided two shocking checklists of events for thinking people to avoid being scorched when all hell breaks loose on earth. The single worst period will be the last 3.5 years before Christ scorches the beast empire worshippers with his fire and heat, and then kills the beast and the false prophet and locks Satan away, and then sets up the kingdom. Many people will be taught, or they have been taught, many people have been taught and are being taught now, not to believe in the God of the Bible. Oh, I don't see him anywhere, or I don't see the hand of a God anywhere. Well, when these events on these checklists start happening, you'll be able to go, oh, look, this was written down 2,500 years ago. This just happened like God said. Now this is happening just like God said. Boom, there's your proof that God is real and God has a plan, and it's being unfolded right before your eyes. So many don't believe that humanity's future has already been written in the Bible. like, well, nobody can know the future. That's good. God can know the future. God created the future. God created the past. God created planet Earth. God created the human process of having babies and giving people life. So God knows, and he's going to guide history to end up being the way he wrote it. Now, no one in the news media is telling us that Egypt and the Arab nations will be captured soon. It's like, oh, Israel always wins the war against the Arabs, so don't worry about it. Our big problem is nuclear war with Israel, with Putin and Russia, or with the Chinese people. That's the big worry. Could happen tomorrow. This nuclear war could happen tomorrow. Oh, that could be terrible. Now, God made this plain in the book of Daniel 2,500 years ago that this Arab-Israeli war will come first, before any nuclear war. Daniel 11:40. At that time, at the time of the end, in the end period, right? Verse 41. He, the leader of a great army, shall enter the glorious land, that's Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown. They'll be captured. Verse 42, and he'll stretch out his hand against the countries, the many countries, and Egypt shall not escape. Verse 43, and he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver and over all the precious things of Egypt, also the Libyans and the Ethiopians. So there's three nations identified out of these many Arab nations that will be captured. Now the next verse tells of nuclear war. After verse 43 comes verse 44. You can look that up for yourself, which almost all news channels are predicting could happen soon, right? Well, God says it will happen, but it won't happen until after the Arab-Israeli war, which you're probably going to see in a few years. When Egypt gets captured, all non-believers would do well to study what God wrote 2,500 years ago in Daniel chapter 11. If they become believers, they can learn the way to avoid the scorching heat punishment. Now, let's take a closer look at the two checklists. The 3.5-year-long giant checklist can be studied in Revelation chapter 9. This checklist is divided into two periods. Period 1 is the 5th trumpet, also known as the first woe. And the second period is the 6th trumpet, 5th and 6th trumpet, right? With a second name, the second woe. So 5th trumpet, first woe, 6th trumpet, second woe. And God also calls the 7th trumpet, which is the appearance of Jesus Christ, the third woe, because that's when he pours out the heat on people and he has the battle of Armageddon and he destroys the beast's power. So this is the final 3.5-year checklist, which covers all of the period known as the Great Tribulation. When this checklist ends, Christ will appear in the sky and begin bringing total peace to all humans on the planet. That's the good, great news. The other checklist of events tells of major events that occur before the tribulation. Jesus calls this checklist of events the beginning of sorrows. That's kind of a strange name, but in Matthew 24, verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. So these are sorrows getting worse and worse, leading up to the big sorrow, the big tribulation in the last 3.5 years. So in Matthew 24:3, he was asked, when are you coming back? The disciples said, tell us when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age, the end time of the events, the end of the age of man and the beginning of the age of God running the earth. Christ told them this in Matthew 24:5. Many will come saying, I, Jesus, am the Christ, which is true, but they will deceive many by saying that I am Christ. They'll use Christ's name to be deceiving many people. Jesus said many times that the Jesus teachers would be deceiving large numbers of people. So you need to ask, how do I know I'm not being deceived? Well, you study the scriptures. Matthew 24:6. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end of the age of man and the beginning of the age of Jesus is not yet. So Jesus was saying 3 big trumpet events will come after this period of sorrows. Trumpet 5, trumpet 6, and trumpet 7. Matthew 24:7. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, a couple of earthquakes just the other day, in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. So Jesus is telling us, Daniel is telling us, Revelation is telling us, and we've got these 2 checklists we can compare to see where we are on God's overall plan of action as it will play out. So Jesus will answer their questions in the verse 14, but first he sets the stage with many bad events that occur before the giant tribulation. Matthew 24:14. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness for all nations, and then the end shall come. Now, notice carefully the words of Jesus used in Matthew 24:14. We could guess or we could speculate what Jesus might be referring to, but we don't need to, because the answer to verse 14, right, jumps off the page in Revelation chapter 11. So you use chapter 11 to explain Matthew 24. Revelation 11:3, and I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, which in God's calendar turns out to be the 3.5-year tribulation period. This is how the gospel of Jesus will be preached as a witness to all nations through God's 2 witnesses. Revelation chapter 11 is one of many threads of information describing events during the 3.5-year tribulation. In summary, the first events checklist, or the beginning of sorrows, describes events to happen just before the tribulation begins. So if you're looking in Daniel 11 and you check off the checklist of the time of sorrows, when you get to the end of that checklist, you know it's time for the great tribulation. So the second checklist shows the events during the great tribulation, and then the 7th trumpet shows what happens when Jesus shows up in the sky. After the tribulation, Jesus appears to punish and destroy the beast power empire and to scorch Satan worshippers with great heat. The first checklist is far easier to understand than the tribulation, because it deals with nations at war with their enemies. That's pretty simple to understand. This group of nations is at war with this other group of nations, and this is who wins. So it's pretty easy to follow and understand. The TV news makes it obvious which nations are enemies of other nations, and the battle between enemies in Daniel fit perfectly with the enemy nations active in today's news headlines. The Arab nations hate the Jews. They hate Israel. They want Israel driven into the sea and destroyed. So that's given to you right there in Daniel 11. It's as plain as anything can be plain, right? And the mood, the atmosphere, the desire is there. Years and years ago, they said in the United Nations that Iran wanted to push Israel into the sea, and Arabs generally are taught this from being young Arab boys and girls. They're taught it all of their lives. Daniel 11:40, at the time of the end, or in the time of sorrows, a great superpower leader will enter Israel to defend her against the attack of many enemy Arab nations. They've done it before. They want to do it now. They're waiting for the opportune time, and it will come in the near future. Daniel 11:41, and he shall enter the glorious land Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown. Question: who are these many countries? The answer is partly given in verse 43. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over the precious things of Egypt, also the Libyans and the Ethiopians. So we're clearly told that Egypt, Libya, Ethiopia, all enemies of Israel to some degree, are 3 of the many Arab nations to be overthrown. These and many other Arab nations have tried time and time again throughout history since 1948 to destroy Israel and have failed, but now the weaponry is super weaponry. It's missiles and rockets. They've never been successful with tanks and aeroplanes and soldiers, but once you start using rockets and missiles, and word has it, Intel has it, that there's 150,000 missiles or rockets stationed around Israel and other nations ready to be fired at Israel when the time is right. Now, God tells us there will be a giant Israel war that results in the Arab nations being captured, which is like, wait a minute, tiny little Israel, billions of people in the Arab nations. How's that going to happen? Because God says it's going to happen. That's how it's going to be. No one in the news media is saying that this will happen. Right? In fact, people are saying this next attack might be the end of Israel. Well, it won't be. God says Israel survives the Arab attack. Right? When this happens, those who know where to look can read what God says will happen next, and to begin to trust God's foreknowledge information. If you see it written in the Bible, and you know it was written 2,500 years ago, this is what God said would happen, and then you're watching TV news and you're seeing the same thing is happening the way He said it would happen, then you can begin to have faith in the merciful God, that He knows what He's talking about, and what He said will happen is going to happen. So once they see God's prophecies completely fulfilled, they can easily decide how to avoid being punished with scorching heat. Now, once Egypt gets captured, people should start believing in the God who knows what He's talking about. Right? Most people are not even believing there is a God. But if you start reading the Bible written a long time ago, this is not a human thing. This is not the CIA writing the Bible for you last week. Right? Once Egypt gets captured, people should start believing in a God who knows what He's talking about. Then, if they see the checklist of events is totally reliable, again and again, they should begin to grasp that all God has said is surely going to happen. Most people rely on Bible teachers, on somebody else for their information, when all that's needed is for each person to read God's word for themselves. It helps to have somebody point out where's a good place to read, which is what I'm doing. Daniel 11 is a good place. Revelation is a good place. Read God's words and believe God's words. And don't wait for some intermediate Bible teacher who says that Jesus is Christ but deceives people to try and help you understand it. Just read it the way it's written. God, in great mercy, has revealed His two checklists so that people will see the safest way forward. Now, the safest way forward, not to be scorched with great heat, is to don't accept the mark of the beast in your head or your hand. I hope that when you see Egypt is captured, you'll begin to read God's words and then believe God's words and have faith and trust in God's words. This is how people can learn the way to avoid being scorched by punishing great heat from God.